Plato, Socrates, Bacon, Hume, Rousseau. Too many. A tobacco farmer and lawyer dipping his tin cup into a galaxy of thought. Such audacity, sir. I felt like these great minds were hovering over me, the sword of Damocles dangling over my head. Then I realized my anger towards England's arrogance had violated into cruel reason. The Virginia Constitution's preamble, which I had written, would be my source. And the writings of John Locke, the English philosopher, would be my inspiration. And what on account of all the passion of my soul, it would be taken from me, to be reviewed and edited, urinated by my peers.
I thought it was going to be called the Epistle of Emancipation.
I heard from Sherman it was to be called the Announcement of Alienation.
I do declare the Declaration of Independence, the unanimous Declaration of Independence. Oh, from Pitts to polecats, Doctor, they left out my anti-slavery statements.
Oh, there, Thomas. Mr. Adams and I only rephrased a few things. It was the committee, as I recall, that did some of the omission of those anti-slavery statements. Yes, it was the committee who, how shall I say it, did the real vivisection. You know, I have made it a policy and a rule to avoid being a draftsman of a paper to be reviewed by the public body. I took this lesson from an incident which I will relate to you.
Oh, pray, another anecdote from Paul Richards.
Well, nonetheless, do you remember that little story I told you? When I was a journeyman printer, and a friend of mine, a Prentice Hatter, was about to open a shop of his own. His first concern was to prepare a sign with a proper inscription. He doth wrote these words: John Thompson, Hatter, makes and sells ready hats for ready money. Now, he first thought that he should submit it to his friends for their proper amendments. The first he showed it to thought the word hatter was tautologous.
Tato what?
Tautologous, meaning redundancy.
Oh, redundancy.
Yes, redundancy. Because after hatter was the phrase makes hats, which showed he was a hatter. So hatter was struck out. The next observed that the word make should be struck out, as his customer would not care who made the hat. If they were good, they would buy them from whomsoever made them. So, yes, he struck it out. The third said that the words ready money was useless, as it was not the custom of the shop to sell on credit. Everybody who could afford a hat, well, they would purchase it. So,
Right.
well, the inscription now stood, John Thompson sells hats. Sells hats, says the one. What, nobody expects you to give them away. What's the use of that word? So, yes, precisely. And hats followed it. Oh, as there was one painted on the side. The inscription now was reduced, ultimately, to John Thompson, with a portrait of a hat, subjoined. Well, it's not the greatest story in the world ever told. But it's one of those you have to be there kind of tales, I suppose. Well,
Yet the die was cast.
Legally, this was our declaration of war and independence. Although many battles and altercations had been fought for the year before, we had to make a legal declaration, a coherent declaration to the world.
Yes, little altercations like Lexington, Quebec, and Concord. 8 years of war. The cannonball in the face of a callow youth, bayonet in the belly of another, old men and young alike. Altercation.
stiff-necked fools. Stiff-necked fools in England. I tried to reason with them, but they wouldn't listen. Oh, the stiff-necked fools. I was a British subject. I had loved everything that was British. We all were British Americans. But they wouldn't listen. All the blood and carnage of war. Nay. I lost my own son to the war. Nay, not through death, but it might as well be. You see, he was a loyalist to the king, and I was a patriot. Quite a scene. The young man, the old conservative, and the old man, a radical. A chasm never to be bridged. It was well worth when I wrote, "There never was a good war or a bad peace." La la, I become melancholy. 'Tis not me alchemy. Oh, now John Hancock, there was a saucy fellow. Many claim that he wrote his name 4 times the size, so that King George could read it without his spectacles. Yes, he said we must all be stout fellows. We must all hang together. And I could not help but interject, for we shall all hang separately. Goes to show.
We all knew we were signing our own death warrant.
As to the signing, Thomas, shall we tell them the secret?
Well, as Paul Richards says, 3 may keep a secret if 2 of them are dead.
And since Mr. Adams, you pointed out, we 3 are, shall we say, indisposed.
Yes. On July 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress voted for independence. On July 4th, they approved the text of the Declaration of Independence. Later that day, the president of the Continental Congress, John Hancock, brought the draft over to John Dunlap, a local printer. Mr. Dunlap printed over 200 broadsides or copies of the Declaration. The only 2 names that appeared on it were those of Mr. Hancock and Charles Thompson, the Secretary of the Congress. Later that month, the Congress authorized Timothy Matlack, a clerk to Mr. Thompson, to write an engrossed copy of the Declaration. That famous and official copy was signed by the delegates in August. While the words are Thomas Jefferson's, the handwriting was not.
Leave it to a printer and a calligrapher to add their seasonings to the soup. Well, will you read, sir?
Nay, with all due respect, I shall not read it to you. Right, first of all, I never was a public speaker. Right to let this august body seek it out on their own time and place, especially on this day.
I agree. After all, let them contemplate their independence while they are enjoying the fruits of our labor.